there, YouTube and the world. Welcome to Dechen's Daily Dharma, episode 14, Montevideo edition. I have just arrived in beautiful Montevideo, Uruguay, and I'm on the bus on my way to the center of town. It's a lot warmer here than it is in London. I am a little tired from the 13-hour flight from Madrid, but I've taken a nice walk around town, visited some parks, and now I'm at the Namaste Cafe, which is very hip. It's got cool art. You sit on the floor with pillows, you take off your shoes. Still lots of hours left in the day, lots of sunlight. I'm gonna completely crash in a minute, but gonna have some herbal tea and a vegan sandwich and continue to walk around. Montevideo is a great town to just walk, see things, see people. Very busy place, lots of hospitals, lots of medical clinics, but it's a pretty cool place so far. All right, I'm here to talk about three things that are not the same. Okay, there's a bit of confusion about these three things, and I hope that clarifying these three things will help some of the confusion. So the three things are ordinary happiness, okay, enlightenment, and heaven. Okay, those are the three things that need to be distinct and clear, and I hope to clear it up. Okay, I'll try to not talk too long so the video isn't too long. So ordinary happiness is in nature, and ordinary happiness is when you prefer something positive over something negative. You prefer to be alive rather than dead. You prefer to be happy rather than sad. You prefer to be full rather than hungry. You prefer to be, all those things. You prefer to be young rather than old. You prefer to be rich rather than poor. And yet, of course, ordinary happiness has a flip side, which is unhappiness, right? Once you have a preference for being young, you're afraid of being old. Once you have a preference for being rich, you're afraid of being poor. And so ordinary happiness has a flip side. You're not supposed to feel happy all the time. Okay, maybe half the time, hopefully, or more, is a pretty good goal for someone who only desires ordinary happiness in this life. Okay, and it's what nature has kind of given us, the rules that nature has given us. So in some ways it's kind of reasonable to be content with ordinary happiness and try to preserve its causes and try to avoid losing, try to win rather than lose as much as possible. And of course recognize that each other, we look for what's called the win-win. Now, enlightenment and heaven are two different things. Okay, heaven is a Christian word, and heaven is the reward for being virtuous, which is an eternal paradise, right? A paradise of eternity, paradise where somehow there is no old age, there's no sickness, there's no poverty, there's no deprivation, there's no unhappiness in heaven. Okay, and so you have ordinary happiness, and then if you
want to be moral and you try to put others ahead of yourself, your reward is you go to heaven somehow, okay? And so that's not bad. I like heaven. I like the system of heaven. I like, talking about it. I like, doing good things and thinking, okay, I'm gonna go to heaven maybe, I think it's a good motivator. That eternity in paradise is more worth being a moral person than compromising one's goodness just for something in this life. At the same time, I don't know that there's heaven is real. I don't know that there's more than one life to live. So there are many things in life that are pretty tempting and therefore maybe worthy of some compromise, in order to have some happiness in this life. So you have ordinary happiness in heaven. Now, where people get confused, especially modern yoga people and modern Buddhist people in the West, okay, is enlightenment. I think because a lot of Westerners convert to Buddhism or Hinduism, at least in their own minds they do, that they still, though, grew up Christian or Jewish or something, and they still have an ingrained idea of heaven, which they on a mostly instinctual basis, they transpose the idea of heaven, this idea of no suffering, a place where there's no suffering, with enlightenment. But enlightenment's a bit different, okay? Enlightenment is somebody who, for whom joy and compassion, for whom love and compassion are equal. Okay, in ordinary happiness, a little bit love is preferable to compassion, right? Nobody falls in compassion, but we fall in love. Okay, and love is a kind of escalation of joy. Okay, a mirroring of joy and a sharing of joy, and compassion is a mirroring and sharing of suffering. Now, an enlightened person is someone who takes equal joy from compassion as they do from love. Okay? Which means that an enlightened person still very much suffers. Enlightened person very much lives in a world of suffering and problems. And in fact, an enlightened person has many, 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 many more problems than a person who's only seeking ordinary happiness, or even a person who's going to heaven. Now, maybe a person who is enlightened in this life will go to heaven because they will do lots of good things. They will live based on compassion. They will take joy in compassion rather than joy in love, or as well as joy in love. Okay, so they kind of get, they're made happy by reducing the suffering of others, which you might think is obvious, but it's not so obvious. A lot of people who take care of other people are nurses or doctors, yoga teachers, massage people, entertainers, and people that make hundreds of thousands of people happy in one moment by singing a song, things like that. They really don't necessarily always feel gratified that other people are finding comfort in their art, in their work, in their service. So that's very important, is that there's kind of a group of people who talk about enlightenment as if enlightenment is heaven. And not only heaven in the afterlife, but heaven now. Right? They think that enlightenment means you're super happy and you never have any suffering for the rest of this life. Okay? And that means they exist in heaven while they're on earth, they claim. Okay? And, I don't want to pee in anybody's, matcha, pee in anybody. I'm in Uruguay. They drink a lot of matcha here. But, yes, this is distinct, okay? So you have ordinary happiness, and if you're not really bad, you're probably going to go to heaven anyway. I mean, how high can the standards be to get into heaven? Maybe it's very exclusive. But in a way, then the more exclusive heaven is, then it's kind of cruel. And thus it is less virtuous to be there, right? And a lot of the stories of enlightenment, enlightened heroes like the Buddha are invited to go to heaven. But they decline. They say, no, I don't want to go to heaven. Because there's no suffering there. There's no suffering in heaven, so I can't practice compassion from heaven. I can only practice compassion from earth. Okay? And that's why the gods don't become enlightened. They're gods. But they don't become enlightened because they don't suffer. If you wound them, they just heal. They eat a magical apple or they drink some amrita and they're healed up. No problem. Okay? So let's just get these three things clear. Ordinary happiness, nature is great. Anybody dedicating themselves to nature, they're going to be happy sometimes, they're going to be unhappy other times. And the two things contrast each other. So you appreciate your happiness more for having lived through some unhappiness to get there. Then you have enlightenment, though, and some people, if they're very impartial, like they take joy even when they're poor, they take joy in the wealth of others, that's very enlightened. You know, people who are sick, they take joy in the health of others while they're sick, while they're suffering and sick. That's enlightenment. Okay, but this idea that enlightened people are in heaven while they're on earth, especially talking about like gurus who've died and claiming they're enlightened teachers, so enlightened, and oh, they were never suffering, they were always joyful, and I'm doing a big PR campaign about a dead teacher. Of course, it's great to talk respectfully of a dead teacher and praise their accomplishments. You know, that's a standard practice, you know, of gratitude, of respecting a teacher even when they're gone, you know, respecting that their teachings are still giving the causes of compassion and the causes of love in the world. Right? They've left behind what's called a legacy, praising the legacy of a teacher. That's good. And but it doesn't mean that they weren't human, or that they didn't suffer, you know, or make mistakes, or have a shadow side. And then finally, heaven. Okay, if you're good, go to heaven. Okay, for all eternity, why not? Or if you choose to reincarnate, that's nice. Thank you for coming back when you could have gone to heaven. You decide to come back to earth because you're compassionate, you want to help, you want to make things better. Okay, so those are the three things: ordinary happiness, enlightenment, and heaven. And please get them straight. Okay, I'm not ruining your enlightenment by saying you're not in heaven yet. Okay, and probably being enlightened is one of the best ways to go to heaven, although again, if you have to force your way into heaven, what is it? Then what could possibly be that good about it if it's not letting everybody in, right? So it's there for a purpose, and anyway, that's the lesson for today. Thanks so much. Please hit the subscribe button and the like button and make a comment. What's your definition of heaven? What's your definition of enlightenment? What is your definition of ordinary happiness, and how do the three interact? Or am I wrong and enlightened people are in heaven and I'm just being kind of cynical and skeptical of some claims of some joy-based teachers? You know, maybe that's true.